Hey, this is Dr. Dylan Peckus, and today I want to talk about omega-3 in sleep apnea and how it is a double-edged sword. This is why there's no one-size-fits-all advice, or even one-size-fits-most. Those are for hats, not for health. But what you're going to learn here today is not only insights in terms of how you can optimize your nutrition to optimize your sleep, but also what this really means at the core here, okay? Because if you notice, this isn't playing the didgeridoo in sleep apnea. This isn't getting a mouth guard in sleep apnea. And this is not using fish pills to keep your airways open at night. This is about bringing a nutrient into your body to help with a quote unquote mechanical issue of obstructive sleep apnea. How is that even possible? Okay, is it even possible? Am I just talking out of my rear end? No, you can clearly see my mouth moving. This is not, we haven't hit that point yet in AI, but maybe soon. Stay tuned. So what I want to show you here is in terms of, I mean, this is a pretty common thing you can find in literature of where the amount of omega-3 fatty acids, okay, it's known as the omega-3 index. How many omega-3 fatty acids do you have in a membrane? And the higher you go on this, the more omega-3 you have in a membrane, the less likely you are to have severe obstructive sleep apnea. Okay? The other way to say this is that the less you have, the less omega-3, the more likely you are to have obstructive sleep apnea. How can that be? Okay? Just pause on that for a moment. We're told it's your palate, it's a flap of tissue, it's your big tongue. But yet, this is a pretty consistent finding. Okay? So let's take it to the whiteboard, shall we? So, when we think about sleep apnea, which I do all the time, at all times, the thing we have to recognize is this massive inflammatory cascade. Okay, because every single time, like you stop breathing at night, okay, even if you don't wake up because of that, it causes this massive inflammatory chain reaction. Okay, because think about if I mean, this is kind of unpleasant to think about, but like if you choke yourself, right? How stressful that is when you're being choked, and then afterwards when you're having to kind of get more air back in, right? So this is what happens to each and every single cell throughout your entire body when you stop breathing for more than 10 seconds at night. Okay? Because it's not just you stop breathing for 10 seconds. It's you do that multiple times throughout like a single hour. So like if you have an AHI of 15, that means you do that 15 times per hour. Just and it's at least 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds, 20 seconds. So imagine if you did a breath holding contest by yourself in your office for an hour about like 15, 20, 30, 40 times. It can be a little bit stressful, right? So what is it doing to the inside of your cells? So essentially in your cells here, have whoop, all these little mitochondria, okay? And then in these mitochondria, again, the name of the game, take oxygen plus food goes in, and then CO2 and energy, or ATP, comes out. All right? Now, I want you to think of mitochondria. They have this pull, okay? They pull oxygen towards it, okay? And they actually do through some pretty cool mechanisms that we won't get into today. But if you want me to do an episode about paramagnetism, someone comment. If someone's really interested, I'll do that episode. But for now, just know that oxygen comes into your cells. It is drawn into your cells. That's where it goes. And so when oxygen levels go way down, okay, then this throws off this metabolic machinery and will lead to the production of free radicals. Okay? These are the things that you may have heard about them. They cause aging, they cause damage inside of your cells. All right? That's what happens when oxygen go low. Okay, like this. This also happens when oxygen goes way high. Okay, or it swings back up. When it goes down and up, produces more free radicals. This is the double whammy effect. Okay, it's not actually what it's called in the literature, but what I'm calling it right now, because when oxygen goes way down, you cause hypoxia. All right? You're choking out cells. Okay? But when it goes way back up, it's called a reperfusion injury. Okay? This is fundamentally what kills people in a heart attack. Because when you have a heart attack, blood is not flowing to your heart like it should be. You get hypoxia. And this is somewhat doable in the grand scheme of things that your body goes through. But when oxygen goes back up, this this is what kills your cells. This is what kills you. This is what like leaves families behind. The reperfusion injury. Okay? So, every single time you stop breathing at night, you do this. Whether it's 5 times, 10 times, 15 times, 20 times, 30 times an hour, this is what's happening. And inflammation goes sky high. And then like every single cell, like every organ system, your brain, this is why dementia is way higher. Your immune system, this is why autoimmune is way higher. Even your pancreas, this is why diabetes goes up. Okay. In addition, when you hurt your mitochondria like this, you can't burn fat. This is why heart attacks and strokes also skyrocket, because you're causing a lot of damage to your heart and your blood vessels. This is why if you're over the age of 35, you have sleep apnea. Chances are it's going to shave anywhere from 10 to 30 years off of your life. All right? This is a big problem that we don't want to wait till then. That's why we're dealing with it now. Okay? So, every single time this happens, massive inflammation. There was a banner that could come up, it would say that. Okay? So, what does our body do against inflammation? Well, we have all these anti-inflammatory cascades. Okay, I just put anti. There's a lot of different ones. Maybe you've heard of them, like glutathione. Okay, there's can also be vitamin C inside of your cells, N-acetylcysteine. These are all, fine and dandy. But one of the ones that's the most important is omega-3. I guess I should have given it a proper omega symbol. Let's get all Greek on this. Omega-3. All right. And the reason this is important is that of all the fatty acids, okay, specifically DHA as part of omega-3, so out of all the fatty acids, this one is the only one that is not burned for fuel. It is used as a potent anti-inflammatory, specifically for our friend the mitochondria, okay? Because all these other anti-inflammatory agents, they work outside of the mitochondria, whereas this one works within the mitochondria. In fact, it's literally like embedded into the membrane of it, okay, the little like outside part of it. So that's something that gets depleted, because when you're constantly inflamed, you will deplete this forever and always. Okay, not always. If you fix it, it won't always. Okay, let me let me walk back on that one. But that's essentially something you want to keep an eye out for. Okay, is inflammation lowering your omega-3. So if you got some sort of omega-3 test, and you probably don't need to do it, but if you did, you would find your omega-3 index would be low. Okay, and if you really want to go ahead and do it, you could, but I'm telling you, if you have sleep apnea, you have bad sleep, it's going to be low, regardless of what your diet is. Okay, unless you you eat salmon with you live with a bear and you just eat salmon all day together. That'd be interesting. But this is kind of the crux of this here. Inflammation's draining your body of omega-3, and then it hurts your omega-3 index. All right. And the reason, again, this is super important is, let me pull up my handy dandy chart here. If we actually look at then the sort of intake here, we'll get into these different pieces in a moment, is that, again, omega-3 is used to be anti-inflammatory here. Okay, whereas omega-6, we'll talk about that next, that is more inflammatory. So there's actually a balance here to discuss. Let me see if I can just use my pen. That's way too far away. Okay. So, because at the same time, yes, you have ongoing sleep apnea causing inflammation. The other thing will be, and I used a capital omega by accident, so I forgot this is the symbol for omega. You got omega 6 and omega 3. Okay. Pretty much, this is inflammatory. This is anti-inflammatory. You want to like really simplify it. And this is why when we're talking about how can we help out, this is why it's called an index, because a lot of times you'll see like a 6:3 ratio or a 3:6 ratio. Just to keep things simple and linear in my mind, we'll talk about 3:6. Basically, the more omega-3 to omega-6 you have, then the less inflammation you'll have in your membranes here. If, and we'll get into the big if on that, okay? So, being able to manage these, super, super important. Because, because if you have sleep apnea and you have a high omega-6 intake, guess what? You're doubling down on inflammation, and then you're going to have worse mitochondria, and then you're going to have more sleep apnea. All right? Let's link that up because I haven't really done that properly here because I kind of was like, oh yeah, mechanical issue with nutrients. Interesting. So how does this feed into sleep apnea? Well, again, it comes back to sleep apnea, or how we breathe is dictated by the gases in our blood, oxygen and carbon dioxide, especially carbon dioxide. The less omega-3 you have in your mitochondria, the less efficient they are, or the more inflamed they are, the worse your mitochondria are. Think of your mitochondria like an engine. Your engines in your car, or I guess engine, isn't working very well. Is there going to be more exhaust, or is there going to be less exhaust? All right? There's going to be more exhaust in a less efficient or more damaged engine. Then as a result, you have more fumes, all that, and everyone's like, oh, you're ruining the environment, right? Maybe they don't say that. I have no idea. But the point being, having a low omega-3 index means you have worse mitochondria, which means you have more exhaust, which means you have more CO2. What does CO2 do? It drives overbreathing, okay? And then again, it comes down to this common mechanism that even if you have a deviated septum, even if you have a floppy palate, even if you have a floppy tongue, even if you have enlarged adenoids, even if you have a lot of weight on your neck, even if you're 40 pounds overweight, guess what? The obstruction happens all the same way. All the same stinking way. Okay, you got your tongue here, big old tongue, back of the throat. When you overbreathe, it pulls this tongue and causes an obstruction. And again, that happens from anything upstream, right? Again, you have a big overbite, deviated septum, all those different things. They just increase the resistance in airflow. And when you increase resistance to airflow, and you have a metabolic driver of breathing with CO2, leads to a bigger inhale or faster inhales than normal. That pulls your tongue right in, snaps your airways shut. And this metabolic drive, because as we see, you can have the same anatomy, but if you have a different omega-3 index, then why does that give you a different severity of sleep apnea? Huh. There might be more than just mouth guards and mouthpieces and CPAPs to this. Don't you think? So, that's the link there, okay? So, what do you do here? It's just kind of simple math, really. Okay. Now, in terms of this, I would honestly prioritize. Well, I guess I'll ask you. I drew a down arrow for omega-6, I drew an up arrow for omega-3. Which one? If I was going to tell you to focus on one today, which one would it be? it's actually going to be lowering omega-6, okay? Why is this? I'll tell you in a second, because just drinking fish oil is not going to fix this, and that would be kind of gross. So essentially, in lowering omega-6, you increase the omega-3 ratio just by decreasing the denominator, okay? So just as, for instance, 1 over 4, okay? Let's just say we have, like, this is like omega-3, omega-6 here, okay? Let's just say 1 to 4. That's Dr. Dillon, you're making this complicated, okay? Say it's 1 to 4. So for every 1 omega-3, we have 4 omega-6, right? Well, if I drop this 4 to a 2, now we're 1 to 2, we improved this omega-3 to 6 ratio without changing omega-3 whatsoever. And there's a reason you don't want to just intake a whole lot of omega-3 right now, okay? So avoiding omega-6 is actually a much better strategy. In the beginning, like, I'll explain why. There's a limitation on that. So what does that look like? Let me just pull up my handy dandy picture here. And it's just a common example here, okay? And just looking at foods that are high in omega-6, okay? Peanuts, almonds, cashews, sunflower oil, chickpeas, tofu. But also like, factories meat is going to be a pretty big high omega-6 bomb. And also all processed foods are pretty much going to be high in omega-6 just because they have either sunflower oil or canola oil or other things of that nature here. So look around your diet today. Like, what are the most common foods you're eating? And are they high in omega-6? Okay, that's what you want to look at. Are they high in omega-6? If they are, then you want to substitute them, okay? Or just cut them out, okay? Because that, again, is going to improve your omega-3 to 6 ratio just by removing more of the inflammatory issues. So whether you replace it with something that's more saturated fat, like say you go from, or actually also think of it like this, going down the spectrum here. Because if you're at peanuts, right, 4,000 to 1, you go to almonds, that's 2,000 to 1. Still pretty high, but almonds are half as bad as peanuts. And if you go to cashews, like 125 to 1 for 6 to 3, well, that's like 1/18th as bad as almonds, okay? Or if you go to macadamia nuts from cashew nuts, this would be even better. Or like, there's a spectrum there, okay? Or like, say, well, you wouldn't really replace peanut with coconut oil, some recipe, but more saturated fats are actually going to be better than, say, omega-6 fatty acids, okay? So, and then I guess maybe I'll do a separate episode on why saturated fats are not going to kill you, okay? They just aren't. Okay, so that's what you want to really focus in on here, reducing the amount of 6 in your diet, okay? So those things I showed you. Also, chicken fat is another big one. Chicken fat, duck fat, those are going to be relatively high omega-6. Now, what's the big limitation or the problem here, all right? Because when we think about let me see if I can just pull this up. So when we look at the actual molecule of these omega-3s, it'll look like this. Bear with me. And essentially, there's a lot of these double bonds here, okay? Anytime there's a double bond on this means oxygen can come and attach to it here, okay? It'll form this little, like, oxygen triangle here, okay? That's why it's called an unsaturated fat, because something can come in, like oxygen, and kind of take and connect with this molecule here. Whereas a saturated fat, that doesn't really happen, okay? Because it's fully saturated. There's not a whole lot of room for oxygen to come in. Whereas an unsaturated fat will do that. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this whole oxygen connection, because when you have sleep apnea, oxygen metabolism is all over the place. There's going to be more oxygen and free radicals available to then degrade these polyunsaturated fats. So if we go back to, where's my free radicals? Did I lose my free radicals? Here's my free radicals. these will attack omega-6 and omega-3. We already knew that. I said that in a different way, whereas free radicals will reduce the amount of omega-3. But the thing is, there's certain subsets of omega-3 that when they get attacked by a free radical, then they actually make things worse. Okay? So there's certain omega-3s like DHA and EPA that when free radicals interact with them, that puts out the fire, right? There's others that when they interact with the free radical actually makes things worse. This is why, like, when I said like just chugging some fish oil or eating salmon like an Alaskan bear won't do it by itself unless you're addressing like inflammation from a lot of different other ways, right? You're reducing your stress, you're improving your environment, and all those other factors, right? So that's why, like, just for now, focus on lowering omega 6, okay? And then when you start to feel you have a good handle on inflammation, right? Like you're feeling a reduction in symptoms, right? You have better, more mental clarity. You can hop out of bed and really feel mentally sharp and with it within 15 minutes of waking up. You're not having these big slumps in the afternoon throughout the day here. Those are going to be signs that omega 3 can actually thrive in that metabolic environment. But until then, it could have no effect or even a negative effect here. That's why it's a double-edged sword. All right? Because that's why, like, we'll have people, they're just like taking a ton of fish oil, but they are addressing inflammation in other ways, and they're not seeing the improvements that they want. Okay? But when you combine them together, right? Like, say we sent like someone the other day, we like looked at some individual environmental issues, address those, omega-3 with that, they're feeling like their brain's back on for the first time in like years. Okay, so that's why doing that with individual considerations and guidance, super, super important. Okay, so there you go. There is your omega-3 double-edged sword here. And just to help you understand a few more concepts about these factors here, in our sleep apnea freedom series, episode 4 and 5 would honestly probably be pretty good for this year. I would do 4 and 5. 5 more so. Some direct concepts to hear. And of course, if you've, watched all of these already and you're just awesome, you're like, okay, I just want to fix this. Well, first I got to tell you how to get here to this one. So the video series, ochnow.com/SA freedom. Okay. OCH, that's optimal circadian health. That's what that stands for, by the way. ochnow.com/SA freedom. And that will take you here. All right. Now, let's say you've already watched all those things and you're just like, all right, I'm hitting a wall. Enough of like just one thing at a time. I need the help. Just want to fix this. And you're ready to show up and be an action taker and all that. Then what's available for you is our free one-on-one evaluation call. Okay. So 45 minutes. Look at where you are, point A, where you want to go, point B, figure out how to get you there. All right. That's ochnow.com/talk. All right. Once you do that, there will be a form that comes up. May take a while to load. If you're on mobile, it's not coming. Just flip it the other way. It'll show up. I swear. Okay. You just fill that out. Pick a day and time. So there you go, everyone, and enjoy.